Here's a question for you. Do you stress eat when you procrastinate? So if you fall into that camp, I have 5 words for you, whether this affects you personally or you're a coach, a nutrition coach who helps clients with this problem, that can completely change your outlook and actually stop stress eating right in its tracks. So what are those 5 words? I'll tell you in just a second. Well, hi and welcome. My name is Jennifer Broxterman, and I'm a registered dietitian. I own a nutrition consulting company where I work with clients one-on-one called NutritionRx. And I'm also the co-founder of Prosper Nutrition Coaching, where it's a certification that helps health coaches, nutrition coaches, fitness professionals become more skilled at motivational interviewing and the science of behavior change. So not only is it the nuts and bolts of how to teach someone about better healthy eating habits, but how to actually get someone those results and kind of translate what's in their brain and what they want out of themselves every single day. So today's topic is a really important one because I think it is such a global issue that affects so many of us, which is stress eating. And specifically, today I want to explore stress eating under the lens of when someone is procrastinating and feeling a bit overwhelmed or anxious, or like there's just too much to do and that pressure is hanging heavy over their head. So first and foremost, I want to bring an exercise called the 3 voices into our conversation today. And who the heck are these 3 voices? There is the inner bully, there is the curious detective, and there's the wise guide. Now, the person who is not invited in today's conversation is the inner bully. We know from research that shaming people, shooting on them, and basically making someone feel judged, whether it's yourself doing the judging or an external coach or partner who is judging your behavior, none of that actually facilitates positive behavior change. So can we all agree to let's just kick the bully out to the curb as we explore stress eating from a lens of curiosity, kindness, and honesty? So that leaves us with 2 voices left, our curious detective and our wise guide. Our curious detective is our clue and our fact finder. Think of it like a detective or a curious scientist who goes around with a notepad just making observations. They're not attaching a judgment of good or bad to the observation. They're just noticing, naming, and observing whatever it is that they take in and they see. Then what they're going to do is hand that notepad of observations over to our wise guide. Now, who is our wise guide? Our wise guide is that inner voice inside of us that is kind, compassionate, caring, but it also holds our long-term goals and values in the big picture and tries to help shape our decision-making with the lens of what's best for us in the long run. So today, those are the 2 voices we're going to use to explore stress eating. Now, I'd hinted that there's 5 words that we can really use to change and disrupt a pattern of stress eating, especially when it comes to procrastination. And it's such a simple list, we can boil it down to essentially a Post-it note. So what are those 5 words? We are going to breathe, we're going to jot, we're going to walk, we're going to schedule, and we're going to do. And I actually have a downloadable resource that I'll share with you linked down below that whether this is helpful for you as a person or helpful for you as a coach, feel free to grab a copy and work off this framework that I'll expand on in a second. But it really is as simple as a Post-it note. So let's start with the first component, which is to breathe. Now, I will be the first person to admit I totally get the science of meditation and breath work. Am I actually good at it in real life? No, that's still an area of weakness. Now, I don't ever believe in self-talk of saying, oh, I'm bad at something. Now, of course, things can be improved upon or works in progress or, skills that I'm building. But what I want to teach you is like a cousin to meditation. So it's not as overwhelming. It's not as difficult as actual meditation. And essentially, it is this idea of box breathing. Well, what is box breathing? I want you to picture a 4-sided square that has 4 seconds per side. So with box breathing, we're going to just do a breath that has 4 seconds in, a breath that has a 4-second hold, a breath that has 4 seconds out, and then another 4-second hold. And we're going to just do basically 4 breaths altogether. Now, it's sort of nice to hear it in paper or in theory or in a video like this, but it's a whole other thing to experience it. And I know this is going to sound a little bit corny, but in my nutrition appointments with my actual clients, I actually get them to do box breathing where I count it out for them because I want them to feel the physical effect of what this does on their body and their brain. So I'd like to invite you, since you're here learning, to actually experience what 4 box breaths will feel like in your own body. So if you don't mind closing your eyes and just listening to my voice, breathe along as I count out the 4 seconds. Are you ready? Here we go. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, breathe out, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. That's 1. In, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, breathe out, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. Halfway, breathe in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, breathe out, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. Last one, nice and deep. In, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, breathe out, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. Okay, open your eyes, or maybe you watched me the whole time. That's fine too. How do you feel? Can you feel a little bit of tension melting away? Can you feel that sense of calmness? Can you feel anxiety and overwhelm retreating just a little bit? So I won't go into the full science and the physiology of why box breathing and breath work is so good. If you can just trust me and feel it in your body, what we're getting is that calmness, that grounding, that reduction in anxiety. And when anxiety and overwhelm are calm, often why people go and stress eat from a science perspective is they're trying to change the neurochemistry of their brain. So when we stress eat certain foods like chocolate and chips and cookies and crackers and all those kind of snack foods in our cupboards, what you're essentially doing is you're modifying the serotonin and the dopamine in your brain, and you're getting this temporary relief, this temporary high, this temporary numbing out from the stress, the anxiety, the overwhelm. Now, food is one way to change your brain chemistry, but breathing is another really great way to get there. And it's free, so you don't need a meditation app. It's pretty cost effective and time-wise, doesn't take a lot of time, obviously doesn't take any money. And what I like about the box breathing is I can count to 4 times for 4 breaths. Like that feels really manageable. But sitting down and trying to meditate for 15 minutes when I'm feeling overwhelmed and procrastinating and like I want to stress eat, that doesn't feel attainable. So that's the very first step of the Post-it, is just start off with 4 box breaths. Now we're going to move to the next instruction, which is this jot. And essentially what jot is a cue for is it's a brain dump. Get everything swirling around in your head, out of your head, and in a place that you know that is accurately captured down. It could be good old pen to paper, to-do list note-taking. It might be having a notes or a task section of your phone. Maybe you've got a Google Doc where you like to cross things off, or somehow digitally you like to store it in your calendar. It doesn't really matter the form. It just has to make sense to you. And essentially what you're doing is you're unburdening your short-term memory of these loops and carrying all this information of things you have to do. And you're just setting it down and you're placing it somewhere where it won't get forgotten. Now, this isn't even the step where you take any action on any of it, but in a way, you're taking a really big task and you're breaking it down into a ladder or a staircase, the individual sub-steps. It doesn't even have to be perfect at this point. It's just capturing it down. So let me give you kind of a funny example or story from my own life. I had recently come back from a business trip where I'm a Canadian. I had, traveled to the States to do some business, and I had a big mess of receipts, some in Canadian, some in American, and it was just a pile of papers and receipts sitting on my desk. And I like to be really productive at my desk, but this pile of receipts was really stressing me out to the point where I could feel that urge of wanting to go stress eat and procrastination stress eat, because I had to deal with it, but I wasn't in the mood to deal with it. And I heard this kind of cool phrase on the internet, and it's called NUTS, NUTS. And what it stands for is either visual or mental clutter that are nagging unfinished tasks. And I was like, oh my gosh, yes, this is driving me nuts. And this is a perfect example of nuts. So I did exactly what I'm teaching you guys today. I started with box breaths and I just breathed. And then what I did is I just did a brain dump and I jotted down all the stress associated with this receipt pile. So it wasn't just processing a pile of receipts. When I jotted it down, here's how the list broke out. I needed to sort American and Canadian currency receipts. I needed to sort out the ones I categorized properly and paid for on business credit cards from the ones that I just paid American cash because I was crossing, tolls and bridges, and obviously credit card wasn't an easy or acceptable payment. So I had to make sure the things I paid for personally with a currency not my home currency were sorted out separately. Oh, but to add insult to injury, I was switching bookkeeping systems from one digital platform to a different digital platform my accountant wanted me to convert over to. Fine, but that's a whole big task because not only do I have to get the new receipts categorized correctly in this new bookkeeping system, it meant the earlier months of the year, I also had to transfer over. So this pile of receipts wasn't actually just the receipts. It was like the tip of this iceberg of this giant accounting task I didn't really want to do. I was definitely procrastinating on important but not urgent work that had to go somewhere, but I just didn't have a place that work lived in my schedule. So that pile of receipts was really stressing me out because it was connected to a bigger problem that was also stressing me out. So all I did is I just jotted it down and left it alone. The third step of the Post-it is to go out and walk. But really, you can insert any kind of movement that gets you away from a screen and get some physical movement happening with your body. Now, one of the ways I learned about this great idea is actually from a book called Rest. And what the author studied in the book of Rest is he calls it the flip side of the same coin, productivity to hyperproductive resting. And I don't actually mean like hyperproductive, like we always have to be on. What I should have actually said is effective resting to result in increased focus and productivity. That's maybe a better way to say it. And so what he found is that the people who rest by frittering away time scrolling through their phones, looking at Instagram, following another TikTok loop, following cat memes down the rabbit hole of Reddit or YouTube or insert procrastination tool of choice, you don't actually leave that rest feeling rested. You actually just feel more anxious and more antsy, and you can feel that unproductivity that was such a waste. Where when he studies people that are really, really personally and professionally productive, they rest in slightly different ways. They often have more active forms of rest. So they take their lunch breaks and they maybe sit outside and eat lunch and enjoy the sunshine. They go for walks in the middle of the day or after work. They have hobbies where they see friends or they meet up with a social group to go play tennis, for instance, or a game of golf or whatever it might be, going to the gym, hiking in the woods, climbing mountains. And so this group of people that have extra high levels of productive output take breaks in different ways than the average person. And one of the things that's very common or routine is regular walking is a form of rest. Now, there's a couple benefits from a productivity and a procrastination standpoint. One is that blood flow and movement just A, make us feel better. B, remember I talked about the neurochemistry in our brain of that serotonin and that dopamine. It's a great way to help your brain feel better without using food as the gateway drug to get there. But the third thing that the Book of Rest kind of went into is that when you have ideas or projects that you're working through, your subconscious is still wrestling with those ideas, even though it doesn't feel like you're physically laboring over the task at hand. So in a way, it's like your brain is still working for you, but in this really great way that your body and brain feel awesome and don't feel drained. And so they found that a lot of people who jotted problems down and then left them on a piece of paper or left them, somewhere that their brain could set the issue aside, and then they went out for a simple walk, basically got to solutions and worked through the task faster because of going outside for the walk. So how cool is that? Now, you might be in a part of the world where you're like, well, I don't have great weather year round. So I'm going to give you two suggestions. One is I'm going to take a page from our friends over in Scandinavia. I'm probably butchering the translation, but it's something to the extent of there's no such thing as bad weather. There's only bad clothing. So maybe you need a great rain jacket or a warm winter coat. Something simple I even purchased just to help me walk year round is I got these funny little I think they're called crampons, but they're these little things that slip over top of your winter boots, and they have tiny little spikes, nothing too sharp, but they just give you more stable footing on snow and ice. And I like to do a lot of outdoor hiking year round, but also just walking my dog and walking on icy sidewalks. And just that simple change of making my environment more supportive for the behavior I hope to do more frequently, which is walking regularly and taking breaks, warm coats, water repellent stuff, layers, things to make it easier to get outside, all help with that particular goal. The other suggestion I'd like to make is if, say, there's many practical reasons why going out for a walk might not work for you. Maybe you've got little kids and an adult has to be home to provide childcare and supervision. Just physical movement in your house is a great way to check off this part of the equation. It could be doing loads of laundry where you walk things to different floors. It could be tidying up the kitchen so you feel like there's less clutter and things are back in order. It could just be doing some jumping jacks or some air squats or some push-ups or some yoga sequence poses. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. Maybe as simple as getting a mini trampoline and hopping around inside on your trampoline. So my point is, be creative. One thing we say a lot in both Prosper and at NutritionRx is we always want to have a solutions-oriented mindset. So I don't throw pity parties for my clients. I don't throw pity parties for myself. When there's obstacles, it's good to acknowledge the obstacle. That's the curious detective. And then we hand the observation from the detective over to our wise guide. And instead of going, oh, I can't do that perfect solution, our wise guide goes, well, let's be solution-oriented. What can you do? So we're going to check off walk. We've done our brain jump and we've done a little bit of breathing. Now what's next? When we come back in the house, what we want to do is we want to go into schedule. So scheduling has two important helpful byproducts. One is it takes that long to-do list, that broken down step-by-step list, and it starts to give it a place to live in our calendars, in our agenda, where we know it's going to get done. Maybe the immediate schedule is we might do something as soon as we come in the door, but then we know that the task is actually bigger than it seems, and it's something we're going to have to come back to a couple of times to work through it. So like my silly receipt example, maybe when I come in, I can quickly sort my receipts into two piles, Canada and US, and then I'm going to have to schedule a session to start to work on the accounting system of transferring old bookkeeping accounts into the new system. So for instance, that is an example of what schedule might look like. But just knowing that there's a place for this to go is really important. Another technique I want to introduce here is something I learned in my master's degree when I was struggling to get through writing my thesis dissertation. And I want to teach you today about the Pomodoro Technique. Now, some of you have probably heard about this before. Some of you are like, Pomodoro, what is she talking about? So I'm going to read it from my phone just so I don't spread misinformation, but it's a really helpful productivity idea. So essentially, this is a 25-minute timer technique that was invented by Francesco Cirillo in the late 1980s. And it was actually created and modeled after a typical cooking alarm of 25 minutes. So the actual little tomato timers where you twist the top and then it counts down the 25 minutes. So the name Pomodoro was inspired by the kitchen alarm that Francesco used to time himself that was shaped like a pomodoro, which is Italian for tomato. So there's your fun fact for the day. Now, one of the things I always like to think about as both a person and as a health coach is take an idea and then make it your own. So even though this guy worked on 25-minute intervals, you might do 15-minute intervals or hour-long intervals or 45-minute intervals. But there is some science to show that human focus and attention starts to run away from us after about 25 minutes. So the way that Pomodoro was set up is 4 25-minute intervals with a 5-minute break between each one. And then after you complete 4, you take a much longer break. Now, it doesn't mean you always have to work on tasks in 4 25-minute blocks. The idea, the framework is what's important, not the actual individual numbers. So what I kind of get from this Pomodoro idea in regards to the idea of scheduling is schedule a work block and then program a break. And you decide on how many work blocks you're going to do before you max out the time. So I'm going to bring in a CrossFit example. I'm a CrossFitter. I like to CrossFit for physical activity. And I love the way that they write workouts on the board. It's usually something along the lines of like 3 rounds, 4 rounds, 5 rounds for time of different movements. And or what if a gym is programming correctly, they'll set an intention of what time frame, time domain they want you to complete the work. And usually they'll have a time cap so that if someone is maybe a little bit less fit or bit off more than they could chew with the weights or the intensity, there's a time limit of like, no matter what, this is going to be over in 12 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 40 minutes, whatever the intention of the workout is. So that's actually how I schedule productivity sessions when, especially I'm feeling a little bit in that procrastination mood. I might go, okay, I have this receipt task I have to get done, this accounting task. I'm going to do 3 blocks of say 20 minutes. I'm going to take a 5-minute break between each one. And I'm just going to set a timer on my phone and just close off the distractions, close down the internet tabs that don't need to be open, maybe switch my phone to airplane mode. And like, I can get through a 20-minute section. So when I think about a workout and there's like, 4 rounds per time, your self-talk becomes really interesting because you're like, okay, yes, 1 round done. I can do 3 more. 2 rounds done, halfway there. Yes, on the downside of the hill. 3 rounds done. Okay, you got this. Only 1 more to go. And so can you see the psychology of schedule is you decide on a number of blocks, you put an amount of time to it, and then you basically schedule that into your life, whether it's in that moment or somewhere else. And then you just stick to the schedule, but it's not this endless big task of like, get my receipts together. It's just really focused. What can I do from my to-do list in that 20-minute block? And maybe it's just 1 block. And that's okay, but it at least gets you into that forward bit of action as opposed to the feeling overwhelmed, procrastinating, stress eating, and now not feeling great because not only have you stress ate, but you've also procrastinated something important. So this is a great segue to the final tip of the Post-it of 5. And the last thing is to just start to do. So it comes back to the idea of motivation. It is backwards in most people's mind. People think that they have to wait till they feel motivated. And then when they feel motivated, they know they'll take action on what they need to do. It doesn't work like that. It actually works the complete opposite. Action makes you feel more motivated. So if I had company coming over and I was getting a 5-minute heads up that I was having unexpected guests, and I might look around, and I generally have a pretty tidy house, but I might quickly go to the kitchen and go, oh my gosh, they're coming over. Let's load the dishwasher with the dishes that are in the sink. Let's give the kitchen counters a quick wipe. Let's tidy up these papers and, just sort of tuck them away. And imagine if they got delayed by a train and suddenly they were going to come 10 minutes later than they said, not 5. I probably wouldn't stop after the first 5 minutes of tidying. Because I took action, I would probably just keep going. And my motivation to continue would be a little bit higher. But if I waited until I had my whole house spring clean, decluttered, everything spotless before I ever invited company over, I might never be motivated to clean and I might never be motivated to invite company because that's such a big undertaking. So small, tiny actions get the snowball rolling. It's like climbing a ladder. You just do the next rung, the next rung. And this is where the jot step connects to the do step, because by jotting down the big project into little sub steps connected to the big picture goal, then when you schedule those work blocks, it's much easier to do or take the action because you can see the list of, oh, this isn't just one task. This is this task, this task, this task, and this task. So in this 25-minute block, how far can I get within the tasks on the to-do list? So this is just an overall mental framework. And I like to think of this type of coaching as an upstream behavior change approach, because telling someone to just make a better snack food choice when they're stress eating probably isn't going to work in the moment. Telling someone in finger wagging to just not stress eat probably isn't going to work in the moment. So instead, when we take the inner bully and the shame out of the observing of what's going on, and we bring in our curious detective and our wise guide, and we go, well, what's going on here? And what's a maybe more effective system or skill that I can build? Because really, this is just skill building. So if I have the skill to notice and name when I'm feeling anxious and overwhelmed, and I'm in a procrastinating mood, and then I'm starting to feel cravings to go stress eating, okay, here's where the skill has to be switched on. Curious detective goes, oh, Jen, this is a time that you're very vulnerable to stress eating. Let's work through the Post-it. Can you do 4 box breaths? Can you do a brain dump and just jot down what you have to get done? Since you're not being productive anyways, it's much more productive rest to go out for a walk than it is to waste time on the internet or wasting my own time, kind of half-heartedly working on the project, but not really making any meaningful movement forward. Then come back and schedule a few of those Pomodoro efforts, and then just start doing the next simple action, and knowing that action will increase my motivation, which then makes me more likely to get the project done, means I can get that off my to-do list and not stress eat as a procrastination technique. Well, thank you so much for spending some time with me today. We are a community where we support one another, we cheer one another on, we meet each other where we're at, and we just help each other grow and become better. I would love to hear from you. Is there anything you have noticed in your own relationship with stress eating and procrastination that has been especially an effective technique or tool that maybe you can share with our community? I always love learning from one another, especially things that my clients teach me. And so if you wanted to leave a comment down below about what you find is more of an upstream approach that makes you more successful at overcoming the stress eating trap, please share that with us. And we'd love to, like I said, engage with you and learn more about that. If you find these 5 words really helpful, totally take the idea to jot them down on a Post-it note, or to make your life a little bit easier. If you click the link down below, we just have this summarized as a resource that you can download. Maybe you need to hang it on the fridge. So one side of the resource is as simple as the Post-it note, and then the other side of the resource adds a little more context to those 5 steps. So thank you so much for hanging out today. If you feel like you need a little bit more support as a healthy eater yourself, well, one of the ways I would love to keep supporting you in this journey of wellness is I have a 6-week program called Powerful Progress, written by yours truly. And it's a little coaching program where I get to be in your pocket for 6 weeks inside of your phone. So it's a little lesson that every day I will send out to you. It takes like 1 to 2 minutes to read. We go through 6 weeks with a different theme of the week. So 1 week is about vegetables, 1 week is on stress management and sleep, 1 week is about getting more lean protein sources, 1 week is on our beverages, drinking more water, having less sugary beverages, drinking less alcohol. 1 week, actually, I think the most important week, is on our self-talk and our mindset. And the final week wraps up with more whole food meal and snack ideas and lots of recipe choices. So through the 6 weeks, it's a little bit of a nutrition jumpstart or kickstart to better eating habits. You can start at any time from anywhere in the world, and we kind of corral people. So we always start together on a Sunday, so the lessons make sense with the day of the week. And it's an awesome way that I get to personally come in and start to coach you. And we're going to interact through the 6 weeks through your phone. So if that interests you, click the link down below to check out and learn more about Powerful Progress. But I'm just so honored to get to spend some time with you today. And thank you for learning more about stress eating, specifically under the umbrella of procrastination stress eating. And I will see you in the next one. Bye.